Welcome to this video. In this Parts for Altium video, I'm going to cover some of the configuration options that are available for using parts. I'm going to do that by way of showing some examples of or case usages. We'll start out with the demonstration version of parts, which is what we're seeing over here is the parts demo. It's just a small database of parts that can be placed quickly into a design. And let me say, even right now, before we get started any further, if you would like to download and experiment with the parts database, you can get a copy over at pcbparts.blogspot.com. Once you get over to the website, just go to the download parts tab and you can download the demo version. And okay, so the first example is just looking at the demo version, and it's an Access database. So what we're going to do, we're going to spend a lot of time looking at the configuration options in this video. So this is a basic Access database, Access 2007. Parts also supports older Access databases, the .mdb, which dates back to the year 2000, and it also supports MySQL databases. Also, the newer versions of parts support a dark theme, so we can select the dark theme if we like, hit apply, and we would be in the dark theme. One thing real quick about the configuration of this dark theme, most of it's done in the application itself, but you'll also, to get the headers and the borders dark in your Office applications, for example in Excel or in Access, you would go down to your account options. That's not correct. Let's see, we would go to File, Account, and this is at least in Excel, and you would choose Office theme dark gray. There's some other Office schemes available, but I've chosen this dark gray. Complements the dark gray kind of color that we already have in Altium. Or you could do the same thing in Access. You could go down to, I believe it's Options in Access, and then you would choose Office theme dark gray. Okay. All right, so that's kind of the first configuration setting you might want to look at. And obviously, as you can see, we can choose between using a light theme and a dark theme. This is the original kind of classic theme that started with Parts. Parts has been around now for, the blog has, at least anyway, been around for 9 years. The tool's actually been around for over 10 years. It has a pretty good size following now. Has customers worldwide. Most of those customers in the United States, but there are customers out in Europe. Far south is Australia. So one of the case uses I want to look at now is, this is just a basic Access database, but I want to demonstrate probably one of the more robust, if you will, or user collaboration situations where you might have users in very remote areas. So I'm going to load an example of a database that I'm working with. It's a MySQL database for a customer named Totem, and the database is hosted on Amazon Web Services. So this is a MySQL database. It's also, the footprints and symbols are also hosted or kept in a Git repository, and the parametric data is kept on Amazon. And if you're not already familiar with Amazon Web Services, you may know that Amazon is providing web services for most of the Fortune 500 companies in the United States, and it's a very reliable, very robust platform. There's a lot of free trials that are available. For example, you can get 12 months for free on a micro T2 database, which includes MySQL. That's what I'm going to be demonstrating here today. And then even after the 12 months expires, the Amazon database is extremely affordable, in that it would typically cost you less than $100 a year to maintain subscription on that database, if you choose to go that route. Okay, so again, this is a Totem Amazon Web Services database, and it's MySQL 8.0, which is one of the newer versions of MySQL, and it's hosted in the US West on Amazon Web Services. The database is very responsive and quick. You know, I can scroll quickly up and down through the records. We can filter. Let's say we could just quickly filter all the 0402s. You can see this database has 207 0402 size capacitors. And we could also look for some resistors, just as another example. And we've got 367 0402s. If we wanted to see maybe all of the resistors, we could just put in a couple of wildcards, and we would find out we have 605 resistors. Okay. If we wanted to look for a specific value, we've got drop-down menus. We can look at our package case type, for example. Also, there's different choices in here. You could choose whatever field you want to search for. This is just a recommended default for finding parts. And then we can choose a drop-down menu. And of course, it supports type ahead feature too, so we could start typing in 2 meg or whatever. If there's a 2 meg there, we would find it. We could hit apply. And then from there, if you want, we can jump straight into the supplier, look at more details for the part, look at the data sheet. We also have a link to the data sheet. And the data sheet can be stored locally. That's handy if you have proprietary data sheets. So you can create a folder and save maybe proprietary data sheets there. Or you can use a web link to a data sheets that come up with one that's no longer exists there. Let's take a look at that. We will update that. Sometimes one thing about data sheets on the internet is they can go away over time. We'll just drop that back in the hat there. See what we get. We'll update this same part number. We'll see if we get a data sheet. There we go. So for whatever reason, the data sheet link over at DigiKey, since the library was first created, it's changed over time. Anyway. And you may have noticed that we have some additional buttons over here that weren't in the demo version. So going back to the demo version for just a moment, just to show you what that screen looked like. Those buttons weren't here. And that's because the Access database wasn't hosted, the symbols and footprints weren't stored in a Git repository. So we'll go back to loading. It's another feature you may have noticed is that we can hot switch between different configurations. One might be in a MySQL, one might be an Access. The database could be hosted locally on your company network drive, whether it's Access or MySQL, or it could be hosted, if it's MySQL, on Amazon Web Services or some other cloud service. Okay, anyway, with the database in a Git repository, you know, we can always, if you're familiar with Git, you know that there's a diff and a pull, and you can add, and you can commit, and you can push. So anyway, just looking at those, the parts front end's been integrated with my favorite Git shell, which is Tortoise. And you can see here that we have a modified symbol that's been modified here locally on my local copy. So I'll go ahead and commit that. I'm just going to put my initials in there just to get through this really quickly, and we'll commit it. And we'll go ahead and push it up to the repository. that's shared with other users. All right. So anyway, that was what it was like to push to a repository using Git. And if we want, we can, if we were to do an add, for example, we say there's nothing to add, there's nothing new in the local repository or local working folder. And we could also do a pull if anyone's made any changes that we're collaborating, added anything new, we could do that. It typically takes about 3.5 seconds. You can see that was 3,672 milliseconds, 3.5 seconds. Okay, one thing about working with Git compared to SVN is because the files are downloaded onto your copy of the files are downloaded to your local machine. It's very fast. For example, this is that totem on AWS. We'll just log on to that or connect to it, install it in Altium. There we go, totem parts. Sorry. Been a while since I've turned that one on, I guess. Anyway, we'll install that. With that installed now, we can select it in the Altium's components panel. Go ahead and display some models. And from there we can start placing parts into the design, so you can see that it's very responsive. So no issues in performance or speed in placing parts out of there. I'm just gonna delete some of this stuff. And we can quickly and easily sort this, or I won't go into how to set up your components panel, but I think most of you know that can be customized. You can categorize it if you like. Anyway, I just want to demonstrate that we did have a Git repository, and the Git repository could either be hosted on Altium as a project, or it can be hosted on any of the cloud services that provide Git hosting services. Anyway, if you have more questions about setting up a database solution for users to collaborate with, and you'd like to use MySQL and Git, you can contact me over at parts. You can just over at pcbparts.blogspot.com, just select the contact parts and drop in an email address in there and leave a comment, and I'll get back to you. Be happy to give you a demo or help you set up a database. All right, so that's an example of using Git. And like I say, this one here, it's pretty interesting in that it's MySQL hosted on Amazon because the customers are remote. Some of the engineers are in San Diego, some of the engineers are in Orange County, California, and some of the engineers are far away as in Canada. And they're all collaborating efficiently using this MySQL database hosted on Amazon. Been using this database probably for going on 2 years now, and it's been trouble-free, been very reliable. All right, so let's look at another one. We're going to look at an SVN dblib. So here it's added a few more buttons. We've added a button to update the local working folder, and we've got a button to commit any changes that have been made locally to the repository, and we've got an SVN dblib cache, which is where Altium stores the hidden cache. Sometimes that cache can get corrupted, and you need to get in there and find the cache, and you actually need to delete it and then restart Altium, and it'll rebuild the cache. Anyway, It's one thing nice about Git. I've never seen any corrupt caches. So in terms of performance, comparing Git against SVN, I would say Git is winning hands down, and I think you'll find more and more developers and teams that are collaborating that are preferring to use Git over Subversion, over SVN. Okay, anyway, that's just an idea of some capabilities, but regardless of whether you want to create a database solution and host it on your own personal computer or your company network, or you would like to host it on Amazon Web Service or another cloud service, Parts can easily accommodate all of those scenarios. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions about setting up a database, again, you can reach me over at pcbparts.blogspot.com. And you can just select the contacts parts button, drop an email in there, and a comment, a couple questions, and I'll get back to you. Thanks. Have a great day.